And again, in this part 3, with Jeroen, where, yes, thank you. And I'm going to, Carelse.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine.
That's all right. All right. Well,
yeah.
It's not my first language, so what can I say? So what we're going to talk about now is how in my process and in learning what Jeroen is talking about, how it influenced me and how it worked for me. And I want to say that probably one of the most important things that I've been learning is that when we have some kind of trauma in our lives, that really sets into our neurological brain, into the neurological pathways, a scarring of sorts, an emotional scarring that situates itself very firmly, and it continues to harm us every time we repeat the thought of it. And so the whole concept of making a choice of how to improve our life, which is what you're talking about. What can I do? How can I make a change in my life so that it improves the quality of my life, you know, and actually supports me rather than causing me more distress. So maybe you could give a bit of an outline of where we were at that point so that I can then address that.
Yeah, well, I gave once the example, actually, and the example came up when you and I were talking over email. And actually, I still use the example about the weights that you have in the gym. Like many, actually most of us, we identify problems in our life, and like it's often the other. You know, when you don't look at yourself, and even if you look inwards, we still can also use the same metaphor. But the metaphor is about, we see people around us who are causing us harm and who are the cause of all sorts of misery in our life. And these are big political figures, or, you know, or financial people, or wealthy people, or the poor people, or whatever. It doesn't matter. It's always the other. And you and I were talking, and you sort of helped me to come up with a kind of formula. I like formulas. Formulas I could repeat, and I could test and adjust and improve. And at some point I wrote to you like, but Kathleen, consider all these people, all these others, you know, the boogeyman, as weights in a gym. You have, like, you know, 1 kilo weights and 100 kilo weights, and you can shout at them and you can kick at them, and if they're too heavy, you only hurt your toes. So instead of doing that, start with the lighter weights and exercise. That's how you create muscle mass and strength when you're in the gym. But now do it in terms of your mind and your spirit, instead of like be angry for people. And it's not specifically about you, but it's also about myself. If you're angry about people, don't start to use your energy against them. Use them as in some martial arts. Start to use them for you. Start to make them beneficial to some extent. You can't change them. You can't change the, you know, the kilograms or the pounds of a weight, or, you know, the mass density of the iron or something. It's just what it is. Use it. And that sort of opened the whole conversation about, like, instead of trying to make changes in other people's lives, see how you yourself can make a change. And now basically that was one of the you know, basic things that we spoke about for a while. And so I don't know if this makes any sense or answers your question now, but that's what I remember was an important moment.
Yes. Well, you know, it seems to me that since we began that conversation, there's been a flood, an absolute flood of change that's happened in my life. And that's been the most remarkable aspect of it. Part of it was becoming, I've always considered myself to focus very much on the authentic aspect of myself. But there have been times when I've been somewhat blinded by what's in front of me. And so that authenticity after a while doesn't seem to serve me any further. And so when I have found myself up against circumstances where I feel absolutely blind to what is, what kind of choices that I must make. And so when we talked about this, it was like, it's like, why become discouraged when there are negative forces working in our life? After all, you've said, once we finish tackling and coming up with great solutions for one challenge, there's going to be yet another challenge.
Yes.
That is life, because we're on a spiritual journey, and we're not here to just be lazy. We're here to investigate. I mean, you're this incredible investigator. And so it was really a matter of changing my perspective about the purpose of life, even though I've always said, well, I'm on a spiritual quest, but it was like, but I didn't have that analytical aspect to me. Even though I'm analytical, I had thrown that out. I'd kind of thrown the baby out with the bathwater, thinking, well, spiritual means, flow. Airy, not analytical. Analytical is solid. Analytical is solid, it's left brain. Somehow I sense that if I'm creative, then I must be creative, and the analytical side must be turned off. But what you began to show me was that we must be analytical, because if we're not analytical, we're not using our mind, and we can't live life just in emotions.
True.
Because if we live life just in emotions, then we have nothing to tether us, to tell us or show us when we are on point.
Or when you're wrong, when things go wrong.
Well, usually I can tell when I go wrong, because in my experience is, because this is a spiritual evolution, if we miss that message on the spiritual level, then it goes into the emotional level. And I had been really living mainly on the emotional level, occasionally getting up to the spiritual level. But when I missed the information on the emotional level, which I tend to do, it then situates as disease in the body. And that's really when it's me. And so you were, basically you were saying, without saying the words, you don't have to go to that place. You don't have to wait until it situates as that solid proof that you've missed it on the spiritual and the emotional level, and have then disease that you're dealing with.
But it still happened. I mean, you still managed to make a couple of small changes, basically, and things start so. And that was, to me, very interesting, because you didn't do any kind of radical things. You didn't really change the world. You didn't really change, you made changes you made choices, but you didn't go out there to fight the boogeyman.
No.
Not at all. You didn't do that. You made a couple of conscious choices how to react to certain events that might happen or might not happen, and how to look at events in the past, because that's, for me, very, very important. If time does not exist in the way that we consider it exists, cause and effect, linear, what would be the effect of our thinking and our belief about the past event? Are we still able to influence something of the past event itself, or at least our past reaction to that event? So when you talk about trauma, to what extent are we victim of something in the past, or could we still correct parts of it, at least our emotion, and they come on in the territory of imagination? So we spoke about that as well, maybe without using the words, but what if you imagine that something in the past was not that disastrous? What's going to happen to you? It's the same thing as you imagine that you like something. Or how about creating the feeling of being in love? I was teaching my own students how to get the feeling of being in love. It's a super powerful feeling. It's just imagination. It's the same imagination. It's like, I hate that person. That's really the anger. It's also imagination. Turn it off. What happens if you start to smile? It's a series of processes happening when you're smiling.
Yeah.
You know, magic. I know I want to talk about magic, and then we come back to your story again. Magic is something very simple, actually. I can conduct magic here on the spot. I can turn your smile into some frown or something angry even by just saying a couple of words. I can insult you in such a way that you're like taken aback. What have I done? My words change your physiology. You know, your whole, parts of your hormonal system or whatever. I can change it from a distance by just words. Isn't that the magic spell?
Yes.
Doesn't advertising work in that way?
Yes. TV.
Manipulation, political messaging.
Mhm.
So there's a lot about the imagination that we could use. If you can imagine to be happy, but if you can imagine to be smart or to be creative, what if you imagine to be whatever figure you have in mind? I am like Rembrandt. I'm going to paint like Rembrandt. That's what I use. A lot of my paintings, I never painted a portrait of someone. I had to paint a portrait for somebody. Well, it worked out quite well. I never did a self-portrait. I did it myself. Of course, that's the idea about the self-portrait. It worked out quite well for the first one. What did I do? I just imagined I was a good painter. I can't paint. I'm just playing tricks. So the power of imagination is incredible. So if you can imagine something else, a different outcome, whether we call it manifesting or not, which is a slightly different kind of story, things start to change. If you walk around town and you feel great and like, yeah, I'm handsome, or I'm clever, or I'm this, I'm a smile on my face, I feel really proud, people around you will look differently at you as when you are like, oh, I'm so sick, I'm so sorry, I'm so whatever. You affect people, people affect you. And you just imagine something. Didn't even exist. But now it does exist. And that's actually what you picked up. I didn't have to go into depth and explain. You just picked it up and you started doing it. And what happened? I was just surprised actually by the number of changes and how quickly it starts to set in, basically. It was just amazing. I thought it was amazing.
Well, I'm reading this book called The Shaman of Tibet, Milarepa, From Anger to Enlightenment by Winged Wolf. And it's really this story. It's really this story. And it's all about imagination. Ultimately, it's the negative and the positive. It's all imagination. Absolutely. And it's all within ourselves. So we can turn on a dime. We can actually turn from rage to love, from sadness to joy. It is just how quickly can we access our imagination and trust that is available to us. And you offered me that remembrance through your technique because I didn't even understand that I had moved away from it. It was a situation that was rather a silent stealth operation. And so then there you were offering me this incredible model and the remembrance. But isn't so much of life about remembering? We're remembering the past. We're remembering our capabilities. We're remembering our ancestors. We're remembering so much that we have been in so many ways put into a trance or have been detracted, taken off point by the advertising, by the programming, by all the things that have moved us into a semi-state of discontent, misery, lack of being able to dream, lack of imagination, only to have this opportunity with you to realize that we can reclaim that at any moment we choose, but it is a choice, right?
There are two things. Yes, absolutely, it is a choice. Let's start with the last one about imagination and about the past. Yes, there are a lot of processes in our rational thinking and our emotional minds are about the past. I should have, I could have, and whatever. Whereas imagination, well, both could of course affect the past, I believe, to some extent. It's pretty much set in stone in some cases, but you can change something, but definitely the future. So imagination is a very powerful tool to maybe direct your future, not so much to determine it, but maybe to direct it, because I still see the future probabilistic and not so much like something that's a fact. That is one thing, but the emotion and the happiness and the joy and the imagination should never be, in my point of view, should never be something that stands alone. It always should be accompanied with the analytical mind again, because if you are swimming in the sea, or no, maybe let's not give that example. Well, let's say you walk through the forest and there is a hungry bear coming towards you. You can think like, oh, sweet bear, it's, we know it's, whatever kind of sweetness, and oh, I love you and love and light might not be the best solution at that point. You might need to have some sense. Yeah. Maybe running away, maybe that's not the cleverest thing to do. If you have a shotgun, maybe you can now shoot in the air once and maybe the bear turns around or whatever is the thing, but you need to be A, prepared, and B, when you are prepared and when you face the threat, you should act. There is no such thing as, la la lands and it's all going to happen magically because you think like everybody's friendly. That's not the world we live in. And that's not the whole idea. But there is this balance again. So that's why I like so much the analytical versus the intuitive mind or the spiritual mind or whatever you want to call it. It doesn't really matter so much. It's overlap anyhow. So, but that's the thing. You can be very analytical and at the same time you can be very intuitive. I don't see them as two separate processes that have to be like one turn on, one turn off. When I'm talking to you, there are a couple of processes happening. One is a kind of, for example, I don't think first what I'm going to say. It just flows out. I don't know how it's for other people, but I never think what I'm going to say. It just comes from somewhere. So let's assume that's my analytical mind. But at the same time, I'm looking at you. I see how you react, how you sit, if you're smiling or nodding and things like that. And I'm wandering off a little bit like, okay, maybe other connections. That's also a mix between intuition and my analytical thinking. I observe you. So that's a kind of conscious process. So it has to be balanced. There just has to be balance. And the same with anger. There's a place for anger. There's even a place for hate. I'm not of the school which says like hate is bad. I think hate is almost an extreme form of love. In the sense that if you hate something or someone so deeply, maybe you are afraid that that person affects your love of something else, something that is of your making or your family or your culture or whatever. So I'm not really black and white on hate is good, love, or hate is bad, love is good. It's like only love is not good, only hate is not good either. So that's my little intermezzo. Yeah. There's the cat again.
Yes, this is Jewel.
Jewel. Okay.
So yes, and the empowerment that comes from the incorporation of both the analytical and the imagination is obvious, and the reclaiming of a direction and the joy in life is of course without question. So, and it's accessible, and that's the beauty of it. And like you said, you saw that happen very quickly with me, and that's the beauty of, I think, what we're all capable of when we truly make a choice and decide what it is. But we have to have the imagination. We have to imagine what it is we want. If we don't know what we want, that is the biggest downfall.
Yes.
Because if we're just stuck in a limbo, then we can't even create something that we can go toward that could take us out of that misery. So we have to actually, I think that involves something like self-love, that we deserve something beyond that mediocrity that we're locked in.
Absolutely. But you're almost not allowed to even say those words like you deserve something. I mean, I would even put it one notch higher, and like, I have the right, and
Yes.
it's my right. And it sounds absurd. Okay. Imagine I have the right to have a beautiful car. And okay, well, so what? Then if I want to make this happen in my life, I'm very curious, like, is this possible? Can I actually have the beautiful car that I really want? So we spoke recently about manifesting. You have the kind of concept, and it sort of makes sense on a logical level even. You have the concept that through a couple of steps, you can get the things that you really want to have. And for example, prayer, the real origin of prayer is not about wishing, but it's basically going into almost a meditative state where you imagine your future outcomes. Prayer, especially in popular media and in Hollywood movies, is like, oh, please, 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 God, I've been naughty boy, don't punish me or something like that. But that's just like, that's not what I mean by prayer. I mean, the real deep kind of prayer is like meditation almost, or it is like meditation in my worldview. Okay, but you don't need to be religious to do that. The moment you have to be, in my point of view, you have to be very aware of the thoughts that you're thinking, because often the thoughts result into using those as words, and words often result in action. So I gave earlier the example of the magic. I'm going to insult you, and then I get your reaction, and that again causes something in me. So you have to be really careful with the thoughts you have, the words you use, and then the actions that it might like create in the world around you. Okay, if that's true, and we basically all have experienced those kind of things. Like you're angry for somebody, and then the person calls you, like, then you're going to voice your anger, like, oh, you're such a whatever. And then you get the fight, and you don't talk to each other anymore for years. So there you see this very clear example, in my point of view, like, the thinking, the words, and the actions. Okay. But what if you can use this for the better? What if you can set your mind to define a better future? How does it look like? It's not that easy. I've been testing it with people. It's not that easy. They all have like, oh yeah. I want to have money. Okay, you want to have money. And then what are you going to do with the money? Maybe you have 10 million, and the day after you die. Okay, I want to have money and I want to stay alive. Okay, but then you get sick. Okay, I want to have money, stay alive, not be sick. Okay, it's like the old game that you have. Now, interestingly enough, there's a fabulous research, at least I like the man a lot, Bill Bankston. And Bill Bankston has done a lot of research on healing. And he at first thought that healing is caused by energies, like in Reiki, you have energies and that causes healing. And he's a professor in sociological, statistical stuff or something. Anyway, he likes numbers and he likes research, he likes science, and he began to test it. And one of his methods, actually, which is surprisingly very close to one of my own methods, that is maybe not a coincidence. One of his methods is that he was teaching his students to make a list of 100 things that they wanted, and to really visualize and feel and smell what they wanted to have in the future. Let's say the beautiful car, But don't stop at thinking like, I want to have this beautiful car, but sit in the car, feel the car, smell the car, polish the car, drive the car, be in the car, be there in the future with the car. And whether it's a boat or whatever you want, it doesn't matter. But imagine yourself to be there in the future. So that method, it's a long story, but you can look it up yourself for all the viewers. Basically results in the healing of mice. It's a long story. But the interesting thing is, not only the mice get better, but some of the people actually get what they wanted. So here you get actually this beautiful moment where your selfishness, like what we spoke about earlier, I have the right to have this, I want to have this, is not a negative force apparently in this universe. It sort of seems to heal mice from serious cancer. Well, isn't that beautiful? And isn't that almost the opposite of what we have been told? Like, no, that is selfish. That's egoistic and egocentric. Oh, you can't do that. You have to think about others and love. Well, maybe not. It's not the point that you harm other people. That's something else again. Because I think, and also other people think, that if you start to think bad things about other people, it also happens to me. Like, oh, I can't stand that guy or girl. It happens to me as well. But what's the effect of that on yourself and on the other person? I'm very interested in that kind of research. So what is the effect of me thinking negative things about other people? But I don't want to go there anymore, because I've been trying that. And it doesn't feel good for me. It might work for the people. So, but there again, your thoughts, your imagination, and then you have reality. And we can test a lot of things. So, yeah, back to you.
Well, what you say about that is, where our thoughts go, our life goes, and so if we do occupy ourselves with the negative realm, then that's where we're living. That's where we're living. So again, it's the choice. And what was so interesting when we were talking too, because as I mentioned at the beginning of our first interview, I've been doing a lot of interviews having to do with the current political and the war against humanity and the political environment, and over the last 2.5 years, almost 3 years, and it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of effort. And you and I got to talking, and you were, and it was like, well, maybe it needs to shift a little bit to life, because when something is life-taking, it truly does, and it occupies the time. And what is left over for the quality of life and the purpose and the joy? And so, yes, the negative things, it's like that apple that sits in that bushel with the other apples, and it's rotten. And pretty soon, even though it might not be 24 hours a day, but all of those apples become rotten in time. And so it's really a matter of what's our conditioning, and what is it that we are our rights, and what is it that we decide that we're going to claim as our rights, and do we deserve to live quality lives? And I would say that, given today that, that our very carbon footprint is being challenged, and, and we're being taught that, we're the scourge on the face of the earth, that, it's time that we need to take a look at exactly who we are and what do we deserve. And you've shown me that it can be very quick to turn this around, and very deserving. And that's quite a gift that you offer myself and others. And I'm very grateful to you for that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I really don't know what to say about that, but Yeah, yeah. Now, there always has been something in me just to help people, but I never have been able just to react properly when I get a compliment, I've noticed. See, that's one of my things that I have to learn. I just don't know where to place that. I don't know what to do with that, but
Well,
that's just me.
I think we've been taught not to. You know, I over the last couple of weeks, I've thought very much that, you know, you're like this mystic in the village, and that it was, you know, not that a mystic is commonplace, but a mystic was revered and was considered always present within the village, within the community, and always someone that we could go to, or that would appear before us and would share their visions and share their experiences, so that we too could have an impact on ourselves and our families in a very positive way. And so I've begun to kind of view you in that light, and that you know, there are other mystics, and that and I don't necessarily know too many of them, but I certainly do know you, and I think that it's time to recognize that each community needs its mystic, and that mystic plays a central part in our health and well-being on emotional and mental and spiritual level. And it always has been, and in our ancestral times. And why would it not be today? Maybe the term mystic is more archaic, but it's very apt and necessary. And it doesn't have to be someone who is, you know, 106 years old, but you know, it's someone who has studied the ways of how to access themselves. And you know, as an analytical person and an extremely intuitive man, you've combined those, and you have broken apart the nucleus. You know, you've broken apart the atom, you've studied it, and you're going, yeah, here are the mysteries of life, and everyone can view them, and everyone has access to them, and it's a beautiful gift.
Something really like funny that you said 106. I turned 53 in a couple of days, so it's about half of 106. It just came to mind, like, what is this now about? So I'm going to think about this the whole evening, like, half. Because I taught myself, and actually, I like horoscopes for many reasons, and not the normal horoscopes, perhaps, but like, you know, the more in-depth horoscopes, and we spoke about it a couple of times. But in one of them, actually, it says, like, my life starts roughly at the age of 50. So the first 50 years is a bit like, you know, messy and chaotic and not really structured. But my life starts, you know, now, basically. So now you bring up 106, and I turn 53 in a couple of days. And like, I should. But those kind of synchronicities is like the last week. So, you know, I'm writing a book. It's more like a guide, a kind of compilation of methods and the logic behind it. Hopefully it's very thin book, 40 pages with a lot of illustration, because I like to draw. But there, I'm not a writer. I like to talk a bit, especially one-on-one, and I pretend this is one-on-one. And when I'm writing, I'm the whole time thinking like, oh yeah, but what if the opposite is true? Or what about this and what about that? So it becomes like really big, and I have to bring it down to simple. But synchronicities, we almost started with synchronicities. It was just amazing that every time I looked at YouTube, where I have like my favorite channels and things like that, I got a suggestion on the top, which was just exactly what I was looking for. In a sense, like I didn't know that I was looking for it, but like, wow, what is this about? I never heard of this person. And then the person basically said exactly 100 years before I did exactly what I'm talking about. Like, and I don't feel like, oh, I'm not original anymore. Oh, I should really change my topic. I'm like, yes. Other people thought the same stuff. Fantastic. So I just really love that, because it's sort of like I'm anyway going to write a book in a completely different way. is like probably the left page for you. Like left page is like an illustration of what I'm going to explain on the right page. Probably that's how I'm going to do the book. And it's going to be a small book, let's say A5 or A6 or something really simple, or at least small. So I don't have that fear of being not original, even though I'm a kind of creative person. But to come back to the synchronicities, every time I got something. So the last weeks was just overwhelmingly about synchronicity. So when you say 106, I just pay attention to this. I'm like, okay, there is something to it.
I love it. I think that's pretty interesting. So
it's maybe mad, but I don't care.
That is very interesting. That's crazy. Your book, that will be something that we'll all wait for eagerly. And oh yeah, definitely. And so we're coming close to the end of this as well. And so could you maybe just do some summary or a couple of points of something that you want us to walk away with at this moment in time?
Oh yeah, basically I now look at my book and like some of the key things that I want to describe there. One of the things is like look at your thoughts in the sense, when do you censor yourself? So when are you moving from your secret, inner, dark, whatever, naughty thinking into your private life? When do you censor yourself? And when you go from your private life to the public life, what are those things that you actually want to say but don't dare to say? Pay attention to those kind of things, because those are moments that you can improve. You can make it less harsh, more fluid. Try to bring those things together in whatever form or shape. You don't have to, if you have very dark thoughts about the world, you hate people, you don't have to go out there and kill people. Write a poem, make a script for a movie. You don't have to act on it. That brings me to the second thing. Bear in mind that the thoughts that you have often result in your words, and your words have consequences in this world. Even if you repeat the words, you start to believe them yourself, and you start to act in the way that you talk about things. I hate this person, I hate that person, or I love this person, I love that person. That affects reality. So be mindful about the impact of your thoughts and your words on this reality. Then imagine, and that's important, just imagine, fantasize. What if I am successful? What if I am beautiful? What if people actually like me? What if this and what if that? Actually, that's funny. What if people like me? Oh, yeah, I'm actually handsome, or I'm smart, or I'm wealthy, or whatever it is. Imagine it and act it out. We all live in a world with lots of restrictions. You don't have to worry about those. Some people are that poor, live in the gutter, have addictions, have this and that. The restrictions are there. Some people have a lot of money, can do whatever they want, but they also have their own problems. The point is, within the restrictions that you have the power of imagination. You can start to do something. So it's not about like, I'm going to change the world when I think a wish. No, that's powerless. Nothing is going to change properly. But the smile on your face and the confidence that you expose is going to change people, at least how they look at you. You're going to be a different person. You affect other people, how they interact with you. Things might start to work there. And we can't predict that, but we can sort of steer that. So there are a couple of things that you can just do, and they don't cost money. They take a bit of energy, perhaps a little bit of willpower. You don't need to go to school. You don't need to read the research. This is 2 minutes of your life. Just practice it.
That's fantastic. Well, I want to thank you